Trick used to be sub for CJ, and they played against SKT and they won. So I think actually Trick is one of the best junglers in Europe. Like just the way he plays, he's really aggressive, and he knows how to be aggressive and how to control the map. So it's really good for me as well to help him, to control the map. I think we will minimum get into playoffs, but I think we can get top 4.
Welcome back to the European LCS. Gamers 2 aiming for playoffs, and they're going to be taking on the brand new Elements lineup. If we took a look, take a look. I want to swim. No, if we take a look at both squads, we got to start with Elements. 2 seasons ago, coming into the season as a super team, then Alliance built around Froggen. Now almost all of that identity is gone, and it's a new era for them.
Yeah, they had a lot of trials to fix that sinking ship. Didn't really work out for them.
On the lake.
Yeah, on the lake, exactly. Metaphors all around. Yeah, a new roster here, and yeah, just looking at the players overall, I don't think any of them, except for Mr. Rawls, maybe is above like bottom 2 of the LCS in their role. Maybe AK can surprise if he has improved a lot, but overall, grim things for Elements.
Well, harsh judgment there, but they do have everything to prove. Let's take a look at that lineup the organization is bringing to the 2016 Spring Split. Steve, Julius, Aika, Mr. Rawls, Spatel, and their coach Nif. And as said, a lot will be coming out of how can they manage the void that Froggen left.
Yeah, and I think even though it's a completely different team, it's worth talking about this is the organization that for the past 2 years pretty much has just constantly built around Froggen. Alliance, now Elements, now Froggen's gone. They didn't really build or foster talent over the last 2 years that has stuck around the team. Yes, they have now Sprattle. I'm not going to try and pronounce it properly, but
I don't know if that was proper.
Formerly Promiscu, no, I'm not even going to try. Formerly Promiscu is pretty much the only player they've held on to, and it is a problem with teams, is if you're not building talent for the future, when your players leave, however do you recover from that?
Yeah, some critics of Elements were saying, well, it is Froggen forcing his teammates to play this very signature Froggen-esque style. I don't personally really agree with it, but this is the first time now Elements can prove as an organization that they can build something new, foster talents. A lot of these players, it's their second or third try. I mean, we've seen Gilius before, we've seen Mr. Rawls before, we've seen Promiscu before. Aka and Steve as well haven't really left a good mark, but with good infrastructure, potentially they could grow. Those are all really rainbows and sunshine. I don't think it's going to happen. I think these are definitely candidates for one of the last positions, if not the last position in the LCS.
Wow, harsh judgment there, as I said, but they're going to have to prove it. And talking about fostering talent, their opponents, G2, they've had a different story as well. Roster instability, 8 changes in the last 8 months for them, so they can start fostering now.
It's been musical chairs throughout all of Challenger. 13 players total between May and December of 2015 for Gamers 2. They've had a lot of movement. With mixed success. At the end of the Challenger split, they kind of showed up and went, hey, cool, we've got a lineup that can win, and then 2 of them leave. One of them goes to North America, they bring in 2 Koreans. So, It's been a real revolving door in G2, and hopefully they've now kind of settled themselves on a lineup they trust.
Yeah, when in doubt, call Korea. That's usually the thing they go for. I do like Hybrid, their support player. I think he has an undefined skill ceiling. He has some potential left. He was very confident, though. There's a limit to confidence I would really want players to have. I think he's aiming a little bit too high right now, but it's good that at least he feels comfortable playing. They have some talent here. Questionable move from Kiki is going. So he left UOL to go to Gamers 2 because there was more growth there, and now suddenly he's playing top lane. A little weird for me, but I definitely think they have more room to grow as a team and as an organization.
Well, maybe let's take a look at that lineup for G2. And as you said, in the top lane, it's Kiki's. Then we have Trick in the jungle. Perks is holding the mid lane. Then Emperor, Hybrid, and the coach returning as well, Young Buck. And we heard already from Hybrid, I believe as well, Trick. I'm very confident to play with him. I think he might even be the best jungler in the EU LCS, although we haven't seen yet, so it'll be interesting to see.
I think that's a long way to go, because Trick does have some experience over in the Korean scene. 6 games with CJ Entus. He was a sub on the roster, played 6 games in 2015 overall. So he obviously does have some experience when it comes to the top level. Over on the other side, Emperor is a man who has a lot of stamps in his passport when it comes to the regions he's played in. He's played in North America with TDK, played in Brazil with Keed Stars, and CJ Entus Blaze he played on as well. That was a while back over in Korea. So, man, that guy has got a lot of air miles. We'll see whether Europe is really going to be the success story for him, but we've heard so much about him. We've heard, oh, Emperor's so good, he's going to do this for teams. Haven't seen it convincingly yet. maybe this is his time to shine.
Yeah, we do have a tiny computer issue on stage. We're waiting to get that resolved, which gives us some more time to talk about these teams. And Stress, I want to ask you about Perks in the mid lane there as well for G2. Someone you know very good from the challenger scene. I don't really count Kikis to being a challenger player because he spent most of last year in the LCS, but this will be a big test for them.
Yeah, and Perks is a player that a lot of people have talked about. He started becoming noticed a lot by the top players, and he's a player that, in my opinion, can absolutely win games on a handful of champions. In Challenger, Azir, Jace were his champions, and if you let him get them, he would carry a game, no problem. But I have worries about his champion pool if it remains the same, and being a well-rounded player. He's a shining star in certain games. G2 need him to step up and be consistent.
I just want to see how he deals with the pressure from playing the LCS. Perks as an individual has a lot of hubris, as a very confident player, but I want to see what happens if he starts losing lanes sometimes or things don't really go that well, because let's remember, playing with two Koreans as a team new in the LCS in a meta that is ever evolving, where vision is so no more textbook anymore. Like, you have to be really subtle in your placements, a lot of communication, fast-paced games. If that goes wrong for G2, then things may start falling apart, and these super confident players may get a little annoyed, and that's what I'm looking for Gamers 2. How can they bounce back from potential defeats?
Yeah, talking about stage fright on the other side, we have Sprattel. Sadly, name change doesn't erase the past. We know that he had some problems in adjusting on stage as well. How do we think this will gel with Mr. Rallis? Mr. Rallis always been a solid player, but it's not someone you look at to step up and carry a game.
Super calm player, though. If you've ever played or watched Mr. Rallis, he doesn't tilt at all. He's very, very zen. So if there's any remnants of, obviously, if you're not familiar with Sprattel, he used to be called Promiscue, and the joke was pro-miscue because he missed a lot of skill shots that happened to be bound to a Q key. Overall, this time, however, with Mr. Rallis in the lane, I just expect Standard somewhat laning on the safe side of things, and probably maybe play Trundle or something. Not too many skill shots on that Q.
I was going to say something similar, as we saw a fair number of games of Alistair. Will he pick up the Trundle, the Poppy? What's he practice? There is still potential there in that bot lane.
Definitely is. We'll see. I hear that the players are ready and the stage is set, so guys, take it away.
Thank you very much, Sharks. We're about to jump into this game. Elements taking on Gamers 2. And Gamers 2 are a question mark in my mind because I don't know what to expect. We've seen Elements players in the past, and we anticipate them to have struggles, but we know that off-air and off-stage, the team's got a very good mentality. They've been talking about, they enjoy playing with one another. They want to prove the doubters wrong.
Yes, exactly, because everyone already said, okay, Elements, that's a bottom team. There's no auto-relegation anymore, but a lot of people put them down there coming into this split. So
myself included.
These players here, I mean, there's very little pressure on Elements to perform. I honestly feel there's more on Gamers 2, despite them coming in as a challenger team, because they have made, in my opinion, some very interesting pickups in Emperor and Trick. Two Koreans coming in. Trick especially is a guy I'm really looking forward to see what he can do in the jungle. Because in the past, we've had very good experience with Korean junglers coming to Europe, and they've always had a good impact.
And we'll have to see what Trick is going to do today. We've got 5 bans in. Lissandra, Kindred, and Gangplank removed from Elements towards Gamers 2. We saw Nif on your screen there for a moment, still coaching Elements. And on the reverse, Poppy, Lulu, Shen.
Rise is open now. That should be a lock-in for Elements. That pick is so fantastic. And again, as we talked about in the last game, flex picking, it is the key in pick and ban in this meta here. Rise can go to mid and top lane. We see exactly the same with Gamers 2, because Tahm Kench can either go top lane or he can go into the support role. I've even seen Tahm Kench jungle, but it's been a while, so I expect that to be top or support. And Trundle, well, we know it. It's either top or support as well. So you haven't really shown everything for Gamers 2 because you don't really know where each of them are going.
Yeah, we'll find out what they decide. Very quick pick and ban so far.
I have to apologize to Ocelot.
It's G2.
He told me never to
G2. It is G2.
Sorry, Ocelot. G2. It's gone now.
It's been a long time of the previous name. Gambit was still Moscow 5 for about a year after renaming.
I know.
So G2, regardless.
G2.
Back on topic. Tahm and Trundle, the flex is possible. Elise Corki. Corki itself is still also theoretically a flex.
We can do it for everyone,
Listen,
man.
when Fakers run it in the mid lane, then you're allowed to believe it. Graves and Lucian, this will give us a little bit more of an indication. I've heard whispers of Graves top lane being a thing, but we're expecting a jungle.
Graves jungle coming in for Trick. It's super, super strong. We can talk more about it in-game and how teams need to play around it, because it is not your standard jungler like Elise is. When you have Elise, you can run fairly standard lane. She's very good at ganking. She can invade, good at vision control, whatever it is. Graves is more about skirmish, and he needs a team to help him in the early game. get into these skirmishes. He can't just walk into the enemy jungle and find it himself, unless you want to die very quickly, obviously.
Yeah, we'll find out what they decide to do. For Elements, a few seconds left to lock in, and that will tell us exactly where that Corki and that Ryze will be going. Anticipating it to be Ryze mid, Corki ADC for the time being, and for Promiscue, or Spratel as he's known now, redemption, really.
Yes.
Back on the Elements roster, back on the starting roster, after being moved into that support position, and then being removed from it. Let's see what he can do. On the Thresh, Fiora for Steve up top, and Ica will be running that Ryze in the middle lane. So a little bit of everything. A lot of poke if they want it from the Corki. Single target skill shots if they're looking for those assassinations from Elise and Thresh.
Overall, both teams are getting a lot of the current power picks. Corki is a super strong AD carry now, especially with the MF nerf. We know Fiora is still a monster in the top lane. Ryze, one of the best mid laners we have. So Elements can be very happy with the composition. We just gotta look at the lane matchups and what Perkz wants to play in this mid lane against a Ryze. Normally, a lot of the range matchups does really well into Ryze, where the melee matchups tend to lose to him. So it should be a ranged champion coming in the mid lane. Expected at least from Perkz, unless he wants to pull out something surprising.
Well, we heard Stresh talking about Perkz' champion
That makes
pool,
sense.
and the Ahri will be locked in. So use that Spirit Rush to try to stay out of range, or at least get away once Ryze tries to lock you down. Tahm Kench top, Graves jungle, Trundle support, as we were anticipating. There is a lot of damage once Trick can get in range, but that's my only concern, because if he's in range, it means so is Ryze and Fiora.
That is very true, but we gotta keep in mind here, gamers, G2. Ah, so close, man. Ocelot put it in my head. I'm always saying it every time. G2 will have a very strong front line in a Trundle support and a monster of a top laner in Tahm Kench, who just becomes close to unkillable. And he has a pretty good matchup into Fiora. It's very difficult to take him down in these one-on-ones. It's very easy for him to get the 3 stacks and then eat you, get good damage from that, and also set up a potential gank, which is what you need if you have Graves. Because if you do not have CC in the lanes, an AD carry kind of dashing in towards you doesn't really do a whole lot. A Tahm Kench who can eat you and keep you slowed for the entire duration of a fight, that is perfect for Graves to walk up and start shooting at.
Well, we're going to have to find out how the coordination is, because Kikis moving to the top lane from the jungle, where he qualified with G2 at the end of last year. We also just saw Nif and Youngbuck walking off stage shaking hands, former players themselves now turned coaches. We'll see what impact Youngbuck is going to have on the European stage. You guys saw the team comps. Jump on Twitter at LOL Esports, hashtag ELWin if you think the new look Elements will do it, or hashtag G2Win.
G2.
If you think those 2 additional roster changes are the ones that you're looking at, 13 players between May and December, maybe this is the one that gets them to the top of the table. This will be a game to give us some insight into how good G2 truly are. We're on to the rift for the second time in the spring split of 2016.
And let's take another look at Elements and what they've been building here in the pick and ban phase. As we mentioned, a lot of strong picks coming in for both the teams. Elements can run a 1-3-1 setup. Ryze is one of the champions where you do take teleport very often in the mid lane, unless you have to go for an exhaust. So you will have the option to put Ica in one lane, put Steve in the other one on the Fiora, and just sit Mr. Rales in that mid lane. That's a super good 1-3-1 that G2 will have issues dealing with. But then on their side, you have that insane skirmish potential of a Graves jungle and an Ahri in the mid lane. Those two together have so much burst damage onto one target. And then you have that big front line, 2 tanks coming in who can single out targets either with Pillar from Trundle, eating someone as a Tahm Kench and spit them back into your team. Elements can never get out of position, otherwise they get caught out and they get bursted down so quickly by G2. Notice a lot of G2 right now?
We'll get there. We don't need to say it every single time, Deficio.
G2?
But
are you G2?
For Elements, double teleport versus the Flash Ignite on Perkz' Ahri. And I want to see how this early game will play out. We did not see any sort of invades like we did from Fnatic Origin. The more standard sort of fan defensive is what we've come to expect in the current meta.
And remember now, these jungle camps do give a little bit less experience for the laners without the jungle items. So you don't get the same as before where you go like halfway over to level 2, you can rush into lane, get a few minions and hit level 2. It comes after 5 minions now once you take this camp. So you need to get the melees down, get 2 casters, and then you can get your level 2 and start going a bit more aggro. You see both, they're basically doing exactly the same, both teams. Seems like Sprattle got the experience, though, from at least the big one before here. So a bit of a misplay, unless it was a setup to get the Q from Rallis combined with the CC coming from a Thresh. Definitely possible for Elements. We didn't get to see them do the camp.
Got to hit those skill shots since Rals's death sentence goes a little wide of Emperor. Well, it was max range, so being a little harsh here. We do see the 2v2 playing out. So Rals and Spartle with a small advantage, got the level 2 already. Flash Ignite on that Thresh as well, so if anything does connect, Emperor could go down very quickly. We caught a quick glance there of Ica trading with Perks. And standard laning phases just yet. Trick, an early attempt up top. If Kikis can swallow Steve.
We just talked about how easy it is for Kikis to get stacks onto Steve, eat him, and spit him back. There's the first slow. Here's Trick.
Let's find out. End of the line. Will get fired. Doesn't find the wall. Steve is able to walk away. There's some support from Gilius. The cocoon lands. Teleport from Ica. Now Trick, he's going to get eaten by Kikis. The waddle into the flash. Trick is going to dash away. Kikis is going to go low, but he will survive. And they get the teleport from Ica.
And this costs a lot for Ica. You're losing so much in the early game when you teleport away from your lane and you don't get a kill. Obviously, it's a response to the kill. G2 were chasing all the way down to the tower. But we got to see the first gank from Trick, expected towards that top lane. Steve, however, didn't use anything. Run away. So at least he can be happy. But Ica did lose half a wave, I believe, in the middle.
Some pressure there for Kikis. No flash. So if Gilius does decide to return gank, there is an opportunity available for him. Down bottom, Spartle and Raz, they're going forward. Raz going to hold on to that Valkyrie. Waits for the Lantern to safety and does manage to make his way out. So for the time being, continuing to keep the pressure on.
We can talk a little bit more about the Graves jungle, the new pick coming in. If people haven't really followed the preseason too much, it's obviously a surprise. An AD carry who got reworked. Auto attack is very different now, always doing the AoE damage. You know, his Q end of the line is really the big deal for him now. If you do manage to shoot that into a wall, it will instantly proc and bounce back towards you and deal a ton of damage. Normally, people can run away from it. Walls and towers will proc it instantly, and that's where he gets a ton of his burst damage from. He's one of the junglers with the most burst damage, if not the most. At least could potentially rival him, or at least you will try. And if you do manage to land a cocoon, you can win that 1v1 if you are Gilius. If not, you have to be so careful against Graves.
Let's find out how accurate Gilius' skill shots are going to be. Because of the amount of pressure that Trick can put down. On the side of Trick, they have a little bit of a tough time trying to set up some of that AoE burst unless he's got the terrain to work with. Rolls gets caught once again by a Pillar of Ice and some damage. Gilius looking to return. This is what we expected. There's no flash for Kikis, but he's got a lot of grey health. Holds onto the timer for a few seconds and slow comes out. Gilius and Steve, they're looking to dive. First blood secured by Steve. A flash over the wall from Gilius, and he survives. Perks tries to get the kill down. Ignite is ticking. Ike is burning, and Perks finds one back.
Rise here tends to struggle a little bit against some of these range matchups, and at the same time, Ike, remember, he teleported to that top lane. He lost some minions from it. He's been set behind in this lane, and this is not what you want against G2. Perks is the guy we look at to be one of the main carries. He's done it in Challenger. He's doing it now in Game 1 for this team on the LCS stage.
Let's see how it's going to convert to power. Trick is going to set something up in the bottom lane. Rals, slow, goes out. Smokescreen's going to distract. Death Sentence pulls Hybrid under the tower. Exhaust goes down into Rals, and Rals will take the Lantern out. Ignite's burning away on Hybrid, and luckily for the Trundle passive and those biscuits, manages to keep himself alive. But a 3v2 awkward dive backfires for G2.
Well, it was more counter jungling for Trick. After he saw the gank top lane, he took away the Raptors, the Crooks as well. And then, you know, drive by anyway, fire a few shots in and then move on for him. So they didn't manage to get anything for G2 other than an offensive summoner away from the side of Elements. But also with this Graves, what you can do, you can start with the Hunter's Talisman. You don't really need the life steal from Machete. Coming in, you can clear super effective, keep the mana up. You're very fast at taking down gems. You can hear I've been very hyped around Graves. And I think he's gonna be super interesting. And I like that G2 has set up lanes with CC for him to gank. Ari lands a charm, then he can go in. Tom Kinch eats someone and spits them back, then he can go in. So there are ways for this Graves to do something in the early game other than just farming.
Especially when you've got Hybrid roaming as well. There's 3 players set up in this middle lane. Ica has no flash, has no teleport for about a minute and a half longer, but he's too deep towards his own territory, so he's going to be able to stay alive a few seconds longer. And Trick, very aggressive on this Graves. He's inside Element's jungle. Cleared out a pink already, putting some deep vision down. It's a strong start for this imported jungler.
It is, and until you get level 6 on Ryze, you can't really wave clear fast enough to push the waves back, so constantly getting pushed down to your tower opens up for Trick to invade into the enemy jungle, try and find Gilius and get that first hit, proc that end of the line for the insane burst damage. I believe it's 460 base damage at level 9, so rank 5 in the blind for the Graves. It is insane burst, but he needs to use it to be effective.
Sounds like it's your favorite ability in the game, Deficio.
End of the line.
I know you're really, really excited about this mechanic. We'll find out how good Trick is at landing it.
Just shoot into a wall, it's not very difficult.
Well, you got to make sure somebody's in front of you and that wall first.
That's the second step.
That's the second step, one that we always overlook as casters at times. But for G2, holding themselves even, down some CS in the top lane for Kickers, but Perks has made that up in the mid lane. And Emperor and Mr. Rolls as even as can be for the time being, but Rolls is obviously looking towards that Trinity Force, so we'll have a small advantage once that's completed. Just needs to get there first.
Corki can definitely run away with the lane.
And package will be available for him to pick up as well.
Once you get your Sheen, get your level 6, the Corki power spike really starts kicking in all the way towards obviously 2 items completed for him. So it is a very strong pickup right now. Very hard to deal with, also due to Thunderlords making it so effective in the trades.
We'll find out how that works out. Death Sentence connects onto Hybrid, but not really going to result in more. The Flay will pull Emperor backwards. Rawls is thinking about this one. Lands Rocket on Emperor, and then decides not to engage
Trick
further.
though. Again, he's just constantly in the jungle of elements because Perks has full control of mid lane, and because top lane is just dead even at the moment. So if anyone ever walks down the river, they're going to see it, they're going to stop them. Perks even take a mid lane tower for himself.
Perks has not got flash available. There's no more mana for Ica though, so he can't continue the chase. Perks didn't even panic with that Spirit Rush. He's held onto it. Trick is looking for that wall. Smokescreen comes out. He's going to get one of those buckshot auto attacks down. He's going to look for the collateral if the end of the line connects as well, and not even going to get needed. Really? Carry on. Trick is going to go down.
The burst, guys. See?
With the collateral damage, and that's the burst we were talking about. 2 easy kills for G2.
It's all built around this mid lane. Really for G2. Perks is just in full control. He takes mid tower. Ica starts taking a trade with him, running out of mana, so there's real no kill threat onto Perks at all. And we know Trick is sitting in their jungle. Walking in from the side again. Picks up a few more kills or assist. And G2 is really in control, mainly just looking at this mid lane.
Yeah, great start to the game. For one of the dark horses of the European LCS. See how they continue to roll this one around. Got themselves a tower already. And Trick showing off with that warrior enchant. With the amount of time spent inside Element's jungle. Now we're going to see them knock over some of those other towers. We've known from Perks that he has the ability to perform well, played a lot in the challenger scene. And really one of the players that sort of G2 is stuck with. Through a lot of the changes, he's been one of the common faces for the last 6 months.
If I remember correctly, he replaced Ica on G2. Came in, and that really changed the team around because, again, he is a very, very strong carry. And he's just another one of these new mid laners that keep coming through Challenger into the LCS. Hybrid getting hooked in here.
And Sprottle's going to go forward. The box is down. Gilius is looking to support. He decides not to take the Lantern, though. They saw Trick coming through the river. And Perks leaving that mid lane with Ica having no TP. Decide to back away. So an opportunity there. But Sprotle pulling the trigger too early on that ulti.
Yeah, now as a Ryze as well, it's just the worst situation because if you want to fast clear the wave and push it out and try and keep Perks in the lane, you gotta use your ulti. But it ends up costing a lot of mana with your full combo then, and then you can't trade. So there's really no way for you to get the pressure back once you've fallen so far behind. So there can just constantly be trades going on in side lanes because Perks can roam first together with Trick, who's just warding up this jungle of elements.
And of course, what a power difference between Perks and Ica. Tia plus Catalyst versus Abyssal Scepter already. So Perks is feeling very, very comfortable for the time being. And of course, Kikis, who actually gave up that death much earlier on in the game, he had fallen behind. He's actually picked himself up a 14 CS lead over Steve. There's Perks going forward. Thunderlord's procs into Gilius. Now Ica is going to be the next target. A good cocoon onto Trick means that some of the damage is mitigated. Collateral gets the kill, throws the water balloon, and Ica sent home crying.
Right, there's no walls for Trick, but he still gets double damage from end of the line into his ulti. You gotta respect that damage every single time because it is higher than you normally see from a jungler. That's why it's basically a fake AD carry who decided
fake AD carry?
Junking was easier for him.
He has a shotgun. It makes him an AD carry.
You're not an AD carry in the jungle. That's not how it works.
Well, Trick begs to differ. 1-0-2. Gonna start off this dragon now, and at 12 minutes, G2 have got themselves nearly 3,000 gold in the lead. Got themselves a tower and got themselves a great platform to accelerate this mid-game.
I want to see Trick's build from here on and out, because it's always Warrior Enchant, and Tracker's Knife is so strong as well because you don't go Sightstone, and again, you need those additional wards for your team, especially in competitive play. Steric's Gauge makes him a bit of a bruiser, basically. You go more from Mortis as well later on. There is enough magic damage on Element side to do that, and you get these double shields proccing, and you honestly just become, again, a bit of a tank while still doing a ton of damage, and you're very hard to deal with in these fights. Or he can go super aggro and just go Ghostblade if he wants to, like, try and kill anyone. I don't think it's worth it. If you are getting further and further ahead, getting tank items tends to be very strong because the enemy tends to lack damage, and it just counts for even more.
Trick, got himself a Ruby Crystal as well as Boots of Swiftness for the time being. Gonna take a look again at Steve versus Kikis. Kikis has got that Dead Man's Plate already picked up and not been too involved for the last sort of 5 or 6 minutes. It has been about Perks and Trick, but I'm interested to see how well Kikis will perform on more top lane champions as the season plays out, and also how this Tahm Kench is going to impact the remainder of the team fights in the position they're in.
But this is a smart start for Kikis. He doesn't need to start running before he can walk in that top lane. So you take a very simple pick in the Tahm Kench. I mean, let's be fair to Tahm Kench, he's not the most complex champion to play in the game. And you just become that massive tank for your team because you got carries in the mid lane, you got to carry down the bottom lane, and of course Trick on this Graves here, so you have plenty of damage to run a full tank top lane. That's one of the things you need to do with Graves, because you need that front line to set up the Graves to deal damage, to set up Ahri as well.
Front line is continuing to build up. Trundle, a lot of HP with that Sightstone, got some Lucidity Boots. We're seeing a lot of Lucidity Boots today as well, but look at this top lane. Trick and Kikis trying to get their nom on. Steve gets lashed by the tongue of Kikis' Tahm Kench, but he will back away and just more tower damage.
And now G2 also needs to understand that the only way for Elements to kind of have any control towards the top side of the map is by having defensive pink wards. So G2 needs to check these small bushes here and clear them out, because it makes such a big difference once again when you cannot place that many green wards and so on. They've just been running around the same bush, so they are spotted. That's why Steve can also start retreating from the top lane so early, because he gets the call from his team. They spotted this pink ward, careful, they're gonna dive you, and that costs G2 a kill and a top tower. So it just slows down the snowballing, basically.
It's a little worrying when you see that you are against the likes of Fiora and Ryze, two champions who do exceptionally well the later the game goes, but for G2 there's nothing to worry about yet. Still got themselves a 4,000 gold lead. Mr. Rawls picked up the package a little while ago. I don't know if he still got it. And we talk about him at the moment because look, there's 4 members of G2 grouping down bottom. They're going to set their sights on Mr. Rawls. Collateral damage lands across, and Perks is able to get the kill credit. That was just all too easy. Flash and heal used as well.
It's the same again and again and again. Trick and Perks, hand in hand, they walk to whatever lane they want to through the enemy jungle. They're always going to be there first. Nobody can respond despite having double TP in the side of Elements. The Ryze would almost just be too weak if you teleport in to do anything. So you just push so far back on the map. Top lane tower should be next objective for G2. Should be an easy one to pick up as well once they go for it and just dive Steve if you have to.
Let's see if that's the decision. G2 use the culling to push that wave in. Mr. Rawls has managed to respawn, and you can tell by his movement speed he's picked up the package. Let's see how he decides to use it. Here's a replay of how Trick and the rest of the team with Perks get the kill.
Zero vision in their own jungle for Elements, so they can just kind of figure out what's about to happen. And oh, whoa. Wow. EU mid laners, man.
EU mids.
That was a great prediction from Perks.
This is one of the great things when you think that most of the G2 players came from the Challenger scene last year. Mid in particular is one of the roles, and Perks is one of the guys that everyone's looking at. So we did see Steve and Rawls pressuring up top. They've got the help of Spratel, and they push Kikis away. Kikis has got teleport and support coming. Death Sentence has found Trick. Trick forced to flash. He's going to dash backwards. End of the line bounces across Steve, and the collateral damage throws out the water pistol. The rest of Elements are now trying to get away. The icy, spooky, chilly ghost will slow down Ica and Gilius. Trick will go down. Rather, Emperor goes down, as Ica's the one that's picked that one up, and Perks should get the reply. Lets the minions do the work. Cool guys don't look at dead rise. And Elements go down 1 for 1.
In the end, though, 1 for 1, as you said. Tower is still here. G2 will have to recall and back away from this one. Elements, though, saying, we know what your next play is going to be. You're going to go for this top lane tower. You're going to try and kill poor Steve, as we saw quite a few times last year.
So nothing's changed for Steve.
So we are now going to say, we will defend Steve, and we will go up top. We will make that play first. We will make the move and force a fight instead. And it's a good hook at first. Trick has flashed up because he's never really been under pressure and forced to use it. And now it's just a big back and forth. Perks joins in with the spooky ghost. In the end, you trade 1 for 1.
Oh, look, there was that mechanical decision from Kikis. On top cash. even I didn't believe that one. But decent turnaround and reply from G2. They maintain their lead. They actually go even further in the lead.
Steve really needs to get a Black Cleaver, though, if he wants to do anything to Kikis in this lane, because he's going to stack up so much armor on his side, and Steve has to become a split-pushing threat on this Fiora. He has to be able to put pressure on Kikis, force him away so he can start taking towers. That's pretty unfair.
Yeah. That wave clear there from Trick and the rest of G2.
You know, that reminds me
tower.
of another good thing I wrote about Graves. He's the only jungler that offers wave clear. End of the line will clear the wave ulti, as we saw right here.
Yep, clears the wave as well.
It's super underrated on junglers, I'm just saying.
Well, working out in favor of G2. Got themselves 3 towers already. Perks, knowing the charm is unavailable. A few seconds longer. Ica's actually going to back away. Perks got the cooldown back up. Fires it out. Bit off more than he can chew, I feel, for Ica. And look at this hybrid as well as Emperor. They were able to take down the top outer. Shove in to get about 50% off that inner turret as well. It's just Elements have to defend on so many fronts. And G2 have got the freedom of the entire map.
The combat mechanics are greatly reduced when you can spam wards around your own map to try and create a pick. It is greatly reduced when losing towers gives so much extra gold to the other team, because towers obviously are so important now with that extra boost. I was about to say boots, not a boot. It does mean, though, for Elements, if they can get just 1 or 2 towers down after one team fight, like that's a big move back towards the game. It's just looking very unlikely.
Yeah, definitely the case. Now we judge G2 on how they finish the game out. Whenever we look at these new teams coming into the LCS, you start evaluating their individual players, you evaluate their macro game, their pick and ban strategy, and also how good are they at knocking over a Nexus. Because that's the difference between middle to top of the table teams. Dragon number 2 secured. There's inner turrets to be pressured, and G2 have done that exceptionally well already. Steve and Kikis are going to go toe-to-toe. This is going to be an interesting battle. Gobble, gobble, gobble. Steve gets nommed. This is going to throw down a challenge. There's grey health available. The audience is on the side of Steve, as it were. Kikis will get challenged, get killed, and Gilius and Steve after some time, but will it cost a tower? The rest of G2, they're grouping towards the bottom, and Perks, he's shoving in mid as well. Hybrid, he's get caught by a death sentence. Now Ica's trying to get away, finds a lantern to safety. Decent positioning from Spratel, but the death of Kikis for an inner turret, worth.
Well, G2 can be happy with this, because they can push to mid tier 2 as well. Get the towers down. Elements again, they're just trying to make some aggressive plays.
Another one.
Can surprise them. Nice hook.
Will it follow through? The Trundle Pillar will interrupt somewhat, but Perks is able to dash away to safety. The culling will nudge Elements away. Elements get their first tower of the game. Top outer. Split push Steve. That was one of the comeback mechanics. But he's got a lot of work to do. Luckily, he's got a lot of support behind him in-house as well.
If you just look down at the items, now that we are, again, 6.1. For the first time, not that too many things changed item-wise compared to 5.24. We still see, you know, Essence Reaver being in here, despite it taking a small nerf in the last one. But you have to go Rapid Fire Cannon or a Zeal item as the second one if you want the max cooldown reduction. the 20% coming in extra from Essence Reaver. The way the math works now for some reason, 10% crit is 3% CDR, and then his 20% crit is now 10% CDR, and 30% crit is 20% CDR. So Rapid Fire Cannon will give him that, add in some boots, and then you're hitting a 40%, and you basically become a spellcaster. Because you're constantly just dashing around, finding abilities to proc your passive on this Lucian over and over and over. You're not relying on auto-attacking. That means you can play more aggressive as well. You can get onto these carries, and Perks, he's doing the same.
Let's see if the Chomp can land. Spur Rush goes out. He's going to dash away from the death sentence. Sprattle did get Chomp. Now Trick's trying to back out. He's fired the collateral damage, got some distance. Kikis is in amongst 3 members of Elements as Steve gets dropped. It's Emperor that gets the cull. He's going to carry on chasing down. Ica flashes away, but it will not matter. He gets gobbled up by Kikis. And kill credit to Trick. 3 members of Elements down. G2 peel back for Baron.
Straight towards the Baron. We're still early on in the game, but they've been so far ahead, honestly, since basically minute 10. Ica had a TP top lane, he fell a bit behind in his lane, then he got taken down, and it allowed Trick to play aggressive on the Graves. Like, this is exactly how you want to play as Graves jungle. You want to have a winning mid laner, so you can invade into the enemy jungle and just take whatever you want. And obviously Perks on this Ahri. Stressy talked about it on the analyst desk. On specific champions, this guy is a monster. This is obviously a small sample size because it's the first game of the LCS, but we couldn't ask for much more.
Great play, holding the trigger on that Chomp. This even arrives late. I mean, that was 3v4 effectively until everybody else teleported in and joined the fight. And for Steve, 3 members to fight, 3 problems to break down.
And these kind of games are so important for new challenger teams coming in, because often the first or second game, a lot of the players can be fairly nervous. You know, you're sitting here, you're playing in the LCS, so like Perks and Hybrid and so on. Obviously, Kikis has tried it before. So getting that first game out of the way, and also playing like this, taking what we expect to be a fairly quick victory, because they are so far ahead now, it is very important for G2 with the confidence.
Oh, that's for sure. And also is going to give everybody some more things to look at. Looking at Trick on that Graves, great impact. Perks' Ahri is going to be bannable. Inhibitor turret is already down at 24 minutes, and there's no way to stop this push. Elements, they're pushed away by the culling. They've lost an inhibitor as well, and it is just coming apart at the seams. That comeback mechanic of split push, heavily reduced, if not removed, now that they're going to deal with super minions as well.
Yeah, and running double teleport when your map just gets smaller and smaller because you get pushed further and further down to your own base just loses its entire value, basically. Because sitting at the bot lane inhibitor and TPing to the top lane inhibitor, it's nothing. It's not going to help Elements really. They have to pull off a surprise flank engage, hide a ward in your own jungle, so when G2 is pushing down for the inhibitor, you TP in with home guards coming from the Rise, from the Fiora, and you try and take down someone like Emperor in the background. The problem is, Kikis is here on this Tahm Kench. It's one of the reasons Tahm Kench is so good in a meta where double AD carry is very strong. Kindred, Graves in the jungle, Lucian, Corki, whatever, Ezreal. Add in a Tahm Kench top, he can protect the carries and he can be a big frontline at the same time.
Definitely can. The rest of G2 don't even need him yet. Second inhibitor's going to fall. In less than a minute, Baron power play has been exceptionally good.
Oh, they got
the
Perks.
Grand Challenge comes out. They have got Perks and the shutdown gold that goes with it, but at the cost of Sprattle and Steve. Kikis on that front line with the grey health is chasing down. Ica will get killed by Trick. The buckshot goes out. Rawls is the last man standing, and it will not matter. 26 minutes into the game, G2 obliterate Elements, and they will pick up their first win of the Spring Split in Europe.
What a great start for G2 here. I liked the pick and ban phase coming in from them, last picking that Ahri into the Rise, so you can pressure the lane early on. Having that Graves jungle, which I think I spent half the game talking about. From Trick, great performance, just great setup with how the lanes were put together. CC top lane, CC mid lane. And overall, I mean, from item builds, pick and ban phase, everything, honestly G2 just had a great game.
Pretty even damage across the board on the side of G2, but top damage to champions was by Trick on that Graves. It's not a massive surprise.
The burst.
Burst is what made it. But for G2, That is a very, very strong start to their campaign.
This is sadly what Elements hope to avoid. Because in talking to their players, they were confident saying we want to prove people wrong. We want to show that we can be a good team. They still can, obviously. Again, we're only at game 1. We like to draw a lot of conclusions already from day 1.
We have to.
2 games in.
We've talked about Worlds already.
Yeah, for sure. But for Elements, I mean, maybe a lot of the concerns they had as players around the lineup suddenly get some confirmation, because you go in here and the team kind of falls apart, especially around that mid lane. It was a big, big issue. So for them now, they have to go home, and obviously they play tomorrow. There's a lot of things you got to look at.
Yeah.
You cannot afford losing too many games in the start, because it just becomes so hard for you to claw your way back.
Yep.
And obviously nobody wants to sit down there in the bottom of the standings.
Got to think long term. Got to think playoffs, make top 6, try get some championship points on the board. You guys at home, don't forget, we are using a new hashtag EULCS. Jump on and talk about some of the teams. Talk about what do you think about G2, how they've performed, how they're going to do for the rest of the sport. I'm excited to still see H2K and Vitality later.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the 2 other squads that I've got my eyes on,
And
as well
Splice.
as Splice. Yep, the Pulsar-powered Danish.
You said it as well.
Yeah, well, it's an all Danish lineup. I'm sure we're going to hear it way more than we need to, this split.
Maybe.
Yeah,
Once.
exactly. But it's an exciting start. And one of the things that EU lacked last year was some more of those stronger middle-of-the-table teams.
Yeah.
We'll find out today. And as the week plays out, if we're still going to find them. Pulse is on stage talking to the league's newest successful mid laner.
Thanks, guys. I'm stood here with Perks coming in as the mid laner. And first off, Perks, well, that was an extremely strong start to your campaign on the LCS stage. First off, that was basically like a snowball win. What went so well in that game for you guys?
Well, I got a kill mid, so I could have pressure mid the whole game. And of that, I could roam top or bot freely and invade enemy jungle. And ever since then, we just snowballed.
So how do you feel like the team synergy is right now? Because you guys had a lot of roster swaps when you were in EUCS, and now you've got the Korean guys coming in as well. How is the communication for you on stage?
Well, communication in game is pretty simple. Discussions, there is some misunderstanding because of bad English. But in game, we are really good, so I like it.
Would you be able to expand upon that? So in the gaming house, when you guys are playing, how is it like communicating with the Korean guys? Do you have to sit down and like explain it a little bit easier in like simple terms, or do they generally get like league terms?
Well, sometimes we just talk a bit slower or translate on Google Translator, and yeah, we understand each other.
Okay, so also one last question here. Playing up against the EUCS guys is a little bit different. I know Ica is also from the Challenger series, but going up against some of the stronger mid laners like Power of Evil, even in the LCS, how do you think that's going to go for you in the mid lane?
Well, I think that I can match up with every mid laner in EU, so I'm confident.
Oh, confident words. Thank you very much, Perks, and excited to see more of you on the LCS stage. We're going to set it over to the analysts to take a look at that game.
Thank you very much.
Perks.
I was going to say, oh no, I ruined my own pun. I was going to say, one of the perks of experimenting a lot with your roster is picking up some gems in the process. And it were, well, a couple of the new players that have really shown what they can do here in their first game for Gamers 2. Of course, we heard from Perks there, but Trick as well, and some interesting picks coming out as well.
Yeah, I would say interesting in the sense that maybe Ari isn't everybody's flavor of mid laner, but this is right down Perk's alley. It's like, hey, I'm going to carry this game, and you can't do anything about it once I get ahead. So not too surprised to see it in his champion pool on this setup, but I just generally like the setup from G2 overall. They picked a composition that can snowball with this double AD carry setup, push towers down quickly, and there was really no answer to Elements, even from picks and bans. They wanted to play for such a later game.
Yeah, I just think in this meta as a whole, and it's what the Fisher was saying as well in Champ Select, it's like a lot of power picks, but almost every pick right now is a power pick. There's so much versatility. It's really hard to draft a bad composition on this meta because it comes down more to playstyle. I think Elements' lineup on paper looks fine, but they just made one crucial mistake, and that was that teleport top early, trying to set up a gank, and then that kind of snowballed everything.
Yeah, that was really where the game kind of turned away from the hands of Elements. But after we got out of picks and bans into the early game, as you were talking about it, I mean, Rise starts with Sapphire Crystal for the extra mana, then teleports top. He goes to the top lane with pretty much no combat stats when you look at it. And then kind of this is what is the result from this.
Yeah, it all started here. So Trick and Kikis are ganking Steve. Steve turns around and the teleport comes in from Aika. Kind of unexpected, but because of the Devour, this does not turn into a kill. So this looks like a nice try and you're like, you know, teleport, but it had a massive impact on the game because later on, what this means for the game is, look in the mid lane, Ari will constantly just be able to push in mid.
Yeah, and this is two plays that happened simultaneously. Elements were focusing on that flash being down from Kikis, and right at the same time, almost 1 versus 1 in mid. You can see Graves is there for pressure, but Perkz manages to get it. He's not quite level 6 even at this point, but Ignite plus the damage, flash forward. This is the presence that Perkz was talking about in the interview there, is able to just take out Ryze before this game even begins.
Yeah, it's a trickle-down effect. You know, Aika helps the top lane gets ahead and gets a gank, but Perkz on the one of the more substantial roles in the metagame right now, which are AD carry and in my opinion mid lane, he gets ahead. So I think Aika kind of shot himself in the foot by teleporting top because especially in a low mobility laner like Ryze, that requires a lot of ramp up time.
Yeah,
wants a long extended laning phase, losing your tower this early, getting camped in the process, just it's really rough. And then the snowball just started happening in Gamers 2. G2 got ahead of them.
We gotta get it out, all of us once.
Yeah, I mean, you've just seen 2, 3, 4 times that they've come mid and just gone straight through the rest of the Elements lineup. I mean, that's the problem with the tower in mid lane being down from about 9 minutes and a Ryze that didn't even end the game with a completed Seraphs. With a tier first build that he rushes, that's just how much pressure they were able to just dominate through mid lane.
Yeah, good job from Trick and Perkz turning the snowball almost into an avalanche. Eventually they picked up Baron and we got the stats. The Baron power play was 6,000 gold, 5 towers and 2 inhibitors.
Whoa.
Yeah, so they...
Well above the average.
And the Nexus, I believe. No, not the Nexus, that came later, but they had just 6,000 gold off that Baron when they were already so far ahead. It was just, a massive stomp.
And that is one of the things to judge one of those newer teams by, because with a lot of individual talent and good moves early game, you can get that lead, but a 26 minute and 5 seconds finish time in your first game in the LCS, that is something to build on for G2.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely something to build on. That is a very important win for G2. When you look at these teams we're expecting for the middle of the pack, they pretty much have to win against the teams that are bottom of the table. For Elements, this is a fairly disappointing result because this is a crucial game when you look at the build towards playoffs. Yes, we're in week 1, but it's these games against middle of the table teams that if you want to avoid relegations, you absolutely have to win.
Yeah, for Elements, I don't think it's a building towards playoffs. It's just trying to not get relegated, honestly. For G2, they play Elements and Rocket in their opening week. They are actually expected to go 2-0, and it could be a massive boost for their already high confidence. So good things may actually happen for this roster.
Very, very good start for G2. Now, before we take a break, we're excited to announce that Challenger Nidalee goes live today in client to celebrate the kickoff of the 2016 LCS season. So be sure to check it out. See the splash art there. Really, really cool. And when we return, 2015 Worlds contender H2K takes on Giants, so don't touch that browser.
We're on to the Rift for the second time in the Spring Split 2016. Really? Carry on. Trick is going to go down.
Burst, guys.
With the collateral damage, Kikis is in amongst 3 members of Elements as Steve gets dropped. It's Emperor that gets the cull. Baron power play has been exceptionally good.
Oh, they got
the
Perkz.
Grand Challenge comes up. They have got Perkz and the shutdown goal that goes with it. G2 obliterate Elements.